Professors and teachers of Reddit, what is the dumbest question a student has ever asked you? I did the walking tour in Berlin. Someone asked the guide, what's the worst question you have been asked? He said, well, this guy from Australia, after the 3-hour tour was finished, asked, okay, so how did Hitler get here from Australia? He hesitated and said, Hitler was from Austria. The dude looked confused and said, yeah, so am I. So I'm wondering why he came all the way to Europe to do all the things he did. The tour guide said he almost felt bad but had to be honest. Australia is the county you are from. Austria is a European country just next to Germany. Imagining Hitler with an Aussie accent right now, and a hatred for the British because former penal colony. I had a handful of middle school students insist that Mount Rushmore was a work of nature. I honestly thought this for a good portion of my childhood. To be fair, I'm not American, and I hadn't seen a photo of it, so I didn't really understand it was a real carving. I thought people just saw the faces in it like they might see the man in the moon. We were talking about cells, cell parts, cell organelles, pass around a model of a cell for them to look at, nothing but cells, cells, cells. Student gets it and asks me, what planet is this? Not a teacher, but I once worked with a Jamaican that thought that Jews were time travelers because it was the year 5775 according to the Hebrew calendar. It took me an hour to try to explain that Jews weren't from the future. He still didn't get it. Bill and Ted's Excellent Hasidic Adventure. One of my students asked why white people are, mostly, in charge of the government if black people were here first. We live in the US. I told him that actually, Native Americans were here first, and he scoffed at me. Not a teacher, but in a history lesson. During year 11, we watched a recreation of the nuke that hit Hiroshima. The video showed buildings collapsing and a guy being vaporized. After the video ended, there was a brief silence before this girl said, would that kill you? Do you want us to write our names on it in English? Asked the puzzled white American teenager in our rural American high school English class. I still have no idea what she meant. Maybe she meant print and not cursive. Once I had a student turn in photocopies of another student's homework, like the actual copies, not that he rewrote them himself. Not the teacher, but my classmate back in high school asked how the astronauts could land on the moon when it was flat and had no gravity. Without even hesitating, my chemistry teacher explained that they shot a harpoon gun at the moon and looped around it until they ran out of rope. To walk in the moon they used a harpoon gun in each hand. To this day I don't know how he explained that without laughing. We're whalers on the moon, we carry a harpoon. But there ain't no whales, so we tell tall tales and sing our whaling tune. Someone once asked my college professor, who used to teach skydiving, if he had ever been killed while skydiving. He had not. This was about a month into the school year. A student would have a pencil at the beginning of class but would lose it somehow and need another one, which would inevitably disappear. I was confused. Because he wasn't dropping them on the floor, so how was he losing them? I happened to see him throw a perfectly good, if dull, pencil into the garbage bin. I immediately rush over going, whoa haha buddy, why are you throwing that away? There's nothing wrong with it. Him, looking at me like I'm a bit slow. It's done. Me? Him, I can't write with it anymore, right? So I need to throw it away. Isn't that what you do when they stop writing? Me? I then picked the pencil out of the garbage bin. It was just papers luckily, and sharpened it right in front of him, wiped it off, and showed him. Me. Okay, you can write with it now. He looked at me like I just cured cancer. It was hilarious. As a side note, he was only 7. I still find it funny he thought you just threw dull pencils away though. Goddammit, I was picturing a senior in high school doing that. It was a question about a question. I was proctoring a university exam. Kid puts his hand up. I tell him per university policy, look, to keep this fair, I can't really answer any questions. You're to write down your assumptions about the question beside it in case something is wrong. And it'll be taken into account when it's marked if something is wrong with the question. A university kid, honors business program, asks me, okay, sorry, what is an assumption? I thought he was being a smart butt, so I said, write down what you assume to be an assumption along with your assumption and it will be take. And as I'm saying it, I can see the blood draining from the poor kid's face as I realize he doesn't know. So I stopped and said sorry, then told him just to write what you think the problem is with the question beside it. I was in high school in 1972, long before the internet was a thing. During a health class discussing nutrition, we were going over various food groups and the benefits the nutrients and vitamins played on our body's organ function, etc. A 16-year-old kid actually seemed to be under the notion cauliflower was a bread and not a vegetable. Not sure the reasoning there. Maybe he had never seen one since they were fairly unheard of in the area we grew up in. He was thinking of cauliflower. Not a teacher but a classmate recently asked if there was more than one moon because it's in all different countries at once. Like it could be in Turkey and Antarctica at once. Know what I mean? I was bewildered. Just remember, every time you look up at the moon, I too will be looking at a moon. Not the same moon, obviously. That's impossible. Not a question, but a great anecdote nonetheless. While discussing places in Washington, D.C. with my drama club kids, I explained what the mall is, the grass promenade area between the Capitol and Washington Monument, which many important buildings border. One of my juniors at the time looked at me in horror and said, "Oh my god, I didn't know it wasn't a shopping mall." I wrote an essay in social studies about how terrible it was that they were thinking of putting a Holocaust memorial in a mall. I used the phrase, "Anne Frank shouldn't be next to a food court." It's been 4 years and I still laugh just thinking about it. Poor, naive girl. Not a teacher but a classmate asked our teacher, who had no sense of taste, if you can't taste anything then why do you eat? Related, I work with a summer camp and take crackers with cheese or hummus and veggies for lunch. One day a kid asked me why I don't eat real food. All from the same girl. We were in Washington, D.C. and at the end of the trip she had to have a teacher point out where we were on a map because she thought we were in Washington state. She asked if rocks were living organisms. She asked why California doesn't just drink the ocean water. In all honors classes somehow, just not the brightest. She asked if rocks were living organisms. To be fair, settlers pioneers used to ride those babies for miles. Not in my class but I had someone ask, aren't Egyptians extinct, in complete seriousness. The guy sitting behind him was Egyptian and he just dropped his head to the table. In 7th grade a kid asked how they put out fires before electricity. He thought water had to be refrigerated to put out a fire. Because cold puts out hot dung. Now you'll tell me there are volcanoes at the bottom of the ocean. So this was a question I asked a particular sweet but unsophisticated 17-year-old student that I loved. We were at the Smithsonian Museums in DC. Me. So would you like to go with our group into the Air and Space Museum? Her. That sounds so boring. Yuck. No. Me. It's one of the most popular museums on the mall. Her. Air and Space Museum. Why would anyone want to see that? Me. You think it's just a museum full of air and space, don't you? Her. Yes. Haha. I grew up in Maryland and we went to the DC museums a lot. I remember thinking it was called the Air and Space Museum, but couldn't figure out who this person was. In 7th grade history, the teacher had told us that if you flip the image of Europe, it looks like the Queen. So this guy 2 seats behind me brilliantly blurts out, did they do that on purpose? Apparently someone decided to tell him about the great European coastal remodeling to shape Europe like the British Queen. Hey, Slutty Bartfast took requests, I think. I used to take undergrad labs and got some real stunners. Top would have to be the student asking for the diluted water. I'm so guilty of doing this. I say this all the time and I totally mean to say distilled water. For some reason it always just comes out as diluted. First day of public speaking, after going over the entire syllabus and every assignment. Will we have to give speeches? I am a high school science teacher. I've given this answer before, but I'll say it again here. I had a student ask, Mr. Mookie Prime, I dreamed that I was raped by a foot. What does it mean? Seeing my blank stare, she continued, you studied physics, so you must know all about dreams. It means that evil is afoot. Not a professor but I am a professor's assistant and I am in charge of doing their daily quizzes. I will often have a joke silly answer to multiple choice questions for option E without fail, even after informing them that E is never the right answer. Someone will answer E, so where it might not be a dumb question, it sure is a case of a dumb answer. It's me, I always have to pick a funny answer. Not a teacher, but I was an English tutor in college. One time after work I was just chatting with my last student of the night when the conversation turned to horses, as our college had a large equine department. She asked, and this is verbatim, "Cows are just horses that got fat, right?" I couldn't believe it. I always tried my best not to make anyone I tutored feel stupid, but I couldn't help but hysterically laugh. Not a teacher, but I took a science fiction literature class in uni, and a fellow classmate said she didn't find a reading relevant because there haven't been any wars in like 200 years. My friends, who was multitasking Half-Life 2 on his laptop through the lecture, jaw dropped as he turned to look at her. If the class gamer looks away to stare at you in horror, you fricked up hard. I'm not a teacher, but one of my classmates kept asking if governments, people, countries were good or bad in our civics class. Is Stalin good or bad? Is England bad? Referring to constitutional monarchy. Is communism good or bad? Keep in mind that she has already turned 15. A result of growing up watching Disney movies and children's media in general. In my world history class, we had the dumbest student in our group. She asked, how do Eskimos build igloos when they have paws? She thought polar bears were Eskimos. Later in the class, she pulls out a can of beans and a can opener, and proceeds to open the can and eat in the middle of class. The teacher both times just stared at her in awe. Baby polar bears being Eskimos. So cute. Met a student who was coming to my school the next year. Me, what kinds of books do you like to read? Student, I don't really like to read. Me, okay, well, what was the last book that you read? Student, you mean, like, chapter book? I taught 11th grade. They probably meant novel as opposed to a magazine or textbook. We have a take-home exam for the course. The questions are released at the start of the exam period and the students have 2 weeks to complete the answers. It's dead easy. Student emails me this question, paraphrasing. So since the take-home exam falls during the exam period, doesn't that mean it clashes with my other exams? Can I get a deferment? I had no idea how to explain to her that, no, a take-home exam which you have 2 weeks to complete does not clash with other normal exams during the exam period. And, no, you can't get a deferment on a freaking take-home exam that you can complete literally whenever you want. Jesus Christ. That is the only stupid question I can actually think of. The stupid questions are the ones that have nothing to do with course content and everything to do with trying to weasel out of doing coursework. To be fair, I remember some people from both high school and college who absolutely freaked out over every exam and spent something like a week straight doing nothing but prepping for it. I never understood that, but I mean, if that's the only way it works for them. I teach 8th grade science. I had a student ask when Pluto was going to blow up since it had become a star now that it wasn't a planet anymore. In 6th grade we were talking about the Pope and this girl asks the teacher, is the Pope Jewish? To which our teacher patiently responds, no, he is Catholic. After thinking for a moment the girl continues, then why does he wear such a funny hat? This next one isn't so much a stupid question but by far the most hilarious sequence of events I've witnessed during my childhood. Was in a 9th grade history class and our first test was on global geography, capitals, fun facts, etc. Basic stuff. Day before the test we have a board race as a fun way to prepare. So it's this girl's turn to race to the board. The question is, what is the capital of Ireland? Now this is a gimme, so it's an all-out sprint to the board. Said girl trips over a backpack and eats absolute crap. Her competitor is barreled over laughing, as is the rest of the class. Determined not to blow such an easy question, she miraculously recovers, dashes to the board and confidently writes her answer. Cleveland. You know in movies when someone fricks up and there is this cricket noise? Pretty much that happened. In complete silence her competitor walks to the board and writes the correct answer. She turns bright red and darts out of the room, slamming the door behind her. As she does, the clock on the wall falls to the ground and shatters. We didn't get anything done for the rest of that class. I've always wondered how she did on that test. I feel like that 9th grader needs a hug, but I'm too busy rolling on the floor laughing. After uttering and translating a German phrase, erst denken, dann handeln, first think then act, a student asked what language that was, to which I said German. She replied with I love it when people can speak a dead language. I looked up and stared through the drop ceiling and into the soul of the universe asking how and why I should go on. While I was proctoring an exam, someone asked is a cell a molecule. This was in a senior 400 level biochemistry course. Not a teacher, but my classmate once asked if Niccolo Machiavelli was a Christian or an antichrist. Think she meant atheist? I know I'm late, but I have to add this one. There was this girl in my college zoology class who told the teacher she didn't believe humans were mammals or animals at all. She was a biology major. LOL. Not a question, but sophomore year of high school, our history teacher was going around the classroom getting people to name presidents. One girl said Harrison Ford. If only she'd paused significantly in the middle, she'd have been right twice instead of wrong once. History teacher here. Why are all the states mixed up? It'd be easier to remember them if they named them in alphabetical order, like have all the states that start with an A border each other. To be fair, this isn't a bad idea in theory. This is easy. I am 9 years into my teaching career, and only one question has ever been so dumb. Watching Apollo 13, the scene is when they first tell Houston they have a problem, and they show mission control, and a student says something to her friend. Her friend says you can't ask him that. Naturally, my interest is piqued. I walk back and ask her what her question is. Are all of those guys there named Houston? First off, how many guys have you met they are named Houston? Second, what are the odds that there are 40 of them in the same room? Gee whiz. This is actually a dumb question I asked. In my honors civics class, my teacher was talking about Rhode Island and how the first people there walked there from Maine. I asked how did they cross the water? Cue look of bafflement on everyone's face. Me, you know, because it's an island. I learned that day that Rhode Island actually isn't an island. Still think it's a stupid name. I might be late to the thread and I'm not a teacher, but regardless, this is a really stupid question. When I was in 6th grade, I think it was 6th, we were talking about John Smith in social studies. One girl asks the teacher if John Smith was George Washington. The teacher says no with a disappointed tone at the stupidity of the question. She then asked if he is Abraham Lincoln. I just couldn't understand how someone could ask so stupid of questions. Maybe they thought John Smith was akin to John Doe. Most of my dumb questions I get happen like this. Okay, we will review on Tuesday and the test will be in Thursday. Review Tuesday and test on Thursday. Any questions? Everyone got it? Kevin, you got a question? Is the test Thursday? Yes. Kevin, it's on Thursday. Sammy, you got a question? Yes. We will have a review on Tuesday. Anyone else? Then Tuesday comes and I get, Professor, are we having a test today? Freaking this. Breathes into a paper bag. I teach 8th grade and have a student who relishes the chance to ask extremely inappropriate questions apropos of nothing, multiple times if he isn't acknowledged the first time. My go-to answer has become you should ask your mother, which he seems to forget is the go-to and results in massive sulking every time it works especially well. Times when this has paid off nicely in recent days. Miss Reddish, is it true that pregnant women get really frisky? Miss Reddish, what is cackling fit? P. Miss Reddish, do people really like to have sex with donkeys? Okay, we're reading A Midsummer Night's Dream right now, so it wasn't quite apropos of nothing, but it would be nearly irrelevant if he actually read the play. Better response, I'm not sure, but I'll call your mother tonight and let her know you're curious. I was in a college history class. The teacher was discussing dams that were built during the Great Depression. A girl up front raised her hand and said, where did they find the water? Mobile mammogram truck is at school. Kid, coach, what's a mammogram? Me, an x-ray of the mammary glands. Kid, so they're checking for Alzheimer's? Me, yep, that's what they are doing. Bless his heart. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.